Welcome to Free Thought Matters. I'm Dan Barker.
I'm Annie Laurie Gaylor. We're co-presidents of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which produces this weekly program. FFRF, with 32,000 members, is the nation's largest association of freethinkers, atheists, and agnostics, and works diligently as a state church watchdog to keep religion out of government, just like our founders intended. Join us or ask for a sample of our newspaper, Free Thought Today, at ffrf.org.
Our guest today, Scott Burdick, is a prolific, award-winning artist whose work has been exhibited in dozens of museums all over the world. He and his wife, Susan Lyon, who's also an award-winning artist, they share a studio in North Carolina, and they also share a webpage. In addition to his art, Scott is an author. His novels include Nihala and The Immortality Contract, which is currently optioned to become a Netflix series. And he's also a documentary filmmaker, including the films In God We Trust, which is about mixing religion and government, and 3 Days to Judgment, about the infamous Harold Camping's prophecy about the end of the world.
And Scott Burdick is also a freethinker, a humanist, and a life member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Thank you for joining us today, Scott.
It's great to be with you guys. And I'm wearing my, this isn't a MAGA hat, this is the Original Reason Rally, which is where I first met you both in person and filmed
10
a
years
documentary
ago.
of that. Yeah, it's amazing how long ago that was. It just seems like yesterday.
I think 8 years ago. So thank you also for giving us the charcoal drawing that you did of Richard Dawkins, and it's hanging proudly in our building here at Free Thought Hall in Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh, that was my pleasure. In fact, I met Richard because of filming that documentary on the Reason Rally as well. So, and just what a cool guy he was to interview and do a drawing of for you guys.
So when people come up to our auditorium on the 4th floor and exit the elevator, that's the first thing they see is that charcoal that you did of Richard Dawkins. So,
yeah, I thought it would be nicer to have it in a place like that than to sell it. So that was really fun. I'd rather have people that really appreciate somebody like Richard see
well,
it.
you've done a lot of paintings and artwork of a lot of famous people and just a lot of normal people, but you must feel like you're living the dream. You get to do, you've loved art your whole life. You graduated from art schools and you've worked with the best, and here you get to do what you love and build a whole life around it. What does that feel like?
That's pretty much been my wife and my goal. My wife, Susan, and I met in art school and in Chicago, and we really, that was our dream. That's why we left Chicago and came to North Carolina, lowered our overhead, and so that we could travel the world and paint the people and the things that we're most interested in, and really learn from the world. And so it feels great. You know, there's ways that we could make more money if we wanted to do portrait commissions and the such, but honestly, the people we want to paint aren't usually the people who could afford to buy our work. And so fortunately enough people buy those paintings of people that they don't know, that we can continue to travel and to, you know, to paint what we like.
So we're going to watch a little clip about your process of creating art. But before we do, you're a non-believer, so where does a non-believer find inspiration?
Well, honestly, I'm interested also in what people believe. I grew up Catholic in an immigrant neighborhood in Chicago, went to Catholic grade school that my mother had gone to, and to the Catholic Jesuit high school. And it was during high school that I read really about a lot of different religions around the world. I read the whole Bible, I read the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Book of Mormon, and that's when I realized that I didn't believe that these things were true, that they were all man-made. And just because I stopped believing didn't mean I wasn't interested. I'm still interested in talking to people wherever we go. We went to India last year. We've gone to paint the Maasai tribes. and just really all kinds of countries. And I love reading their sacred books. And it's not about like trying to change their mind necessarily. It's about trying to understand why people believe what they believe. And that's what I find fascinating.
So what is this clip we're going to see? It's from the Autry Museum, is that right?
This is from the Autry Museum in Los Angeles. We've done that show for many years, and they had wanted to have me do like a little film a demonstration that they sped up kind of just to show one of the paintings that was in the show, a little bit of a process that they could use for like Instagram and advertising and stuff like that.
Well, let's watch that.
I guess my favorite subject has always been people. I love the excuse to sit and draw someone in their natural environment, to hear their stories, their beliefs, their hopes and dreams. Maybe a small part of that comes through in the blobs of paint that represent a life lived and a future to come. In many ways, the painting is simply an excuse to get to know someone.
Very beautiful. So tell us more about that painting. Was this the one that you were doing in Guatemala?
The larger one of the girl in front of the window is from Guatemala. My wife and I went down there with a couple other friends of ours who were painters, and we rented a place for several weeks, and we painted people on the spot. Lots of small paintings that we did of people every day. And then that was one of the girls who posed for us, and I did that in the studio, the larger painting. Now, some of the other paintings in there, it's kind of interesting. That first one where you saw me painting in the mill and the places in the barn, that's just right around where I live here. And the music was, the blues music was from Bruce Burgess, who is the father of two of the girls that you saw posing in that. And there was even a shot of him in the background, so it was kind of fun to put some of his music with the paintings that we did of his daughters.
You were telling us that you often go around the world and set up shop, you know, for 2 or 3 weeks or a month, and just paint the people. Is that right?
Yeah, most of the time it's a minimum month usually. It's about enough time to kind of get to know people and be there. Sometimes we'll travel around a little more, but a lot of times we like to have kind of just a place as our home base. Tibet, we drove in from China and drove across the whole country. There wasn't easy places to just stay. In the more interesting places, we wanted to paint regular people. And then with the Maasai, it was the same thing. We traveled for several weeks around Tanzania and Namibia, but then in Tanzania we got 3 donkeys and some men from the village there, and we just camped our way into the tribal area and painted. Well, that was just photographing and drawings, because we couldn't bring all our painting gear there. So we did a lot of drawings and photographs, and it was pretty interesting. So yeah, we do that all the time.
One of my favorites is, I think you call it the Himba dance. Is that from that trip?
That is from that trip. That's from Namibia, northern Namibia. And the Himba people are just really interesting, wonderful people. And they move around. They're herders, so you don't know exactly where they're going to be. So we hired someone from a similar tribe that could speak their language and translate for us. And then we went out in our truck and we found some of the Himba people there and spent several days with them, and it was just wonderful. sketching. I did lots of drawings, and we took photographs and just got to know everybody. It was really just spectacularly interesting.
Well, you can see the life and the energy and the joy of all those, you know, catching that moment. And then you went to, I think it was Arizona, is that Rose City where that older woman, it's just looking at it, it's like you're seeing a whole story of her life there. Was that in person?
Yeah. That's a real person, and I've done a lot of paintings out west. I haven't done it the last couple of years because we've had trips to India and China and stuff, but I will usually take a month just by myself, and I will drive out west and camp, and I get to know a lot of the people in the reservations, and so I'll paint them at their hogans or within the actual, like the Navajo reservation. That's huge, like 400 miles wide, and a lot of the older people there, I'll go in with relatives of theirs, younger cousins and stuff, and a lot of the older people, they don't speak English, they only speak Navajo, and it's like going to another country and culture, and I just love the people, and the older people are probably my favorite to paint. I mean, their faces are just so full of life, and the stories they tell through the translation of their relatives are just so interesting and amazing.
So how many continents have you visited? How many places have you painted?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. I would have to try to add it up. I know that we thought about that the other day, and we thought there's only one. I have never been to North Dakota in the U.S. is the only one. But as far as countries, I don't know. Probably, maybe 40 or more. I don't know. And there's lots of places we go back to multiple times. I mean, we love Guatemala, and we love India, and there's just so many countries. We love Spain and Italy, and there's just no end to the inspiration you find.
Well, it's a real talent that you have, and it's, your work is realistic. And Annie Laurie's more of an art connoisseur than I am. She probably knows the right words to say, but your paintings are realistic, but there seems to be something extra, whatever that word, maybe a point of view or something that makes you say, wow, look at that. I mean, when you see that face, you're seeing like a whole life story. Is that kind of what you look for when you're looking for a subject?
That's very much. I pretty much, that's one reason I really don't do, I very occasionally I will do a portrait commission of a friend, but I really have to, Sue, my wife always says, she has to fall in love with the model. And for me, it's not so much just love, it's just I have to be interested, I have to have some sort of connection or something that I want to say about them, and so I have to find people that I'm just really interested in, and then I try and paint that spirit, whatever you would call it, emotion, their life, their essence. So I will put them in their own environments. I will include things into the paintings. And as far as the realism, a lot of that, I kind of try to paint things, so sometimes I'll paint the center of interest of the face much more realistically, and then as you go further out, it'll become more abstract, sometimes very abstract. And so my feeling is that the realism will be accentuated by the abstract and vice versa, rather than if I painted everything detailed. So that's just my philosophy.
We have to take a break, but before we do, I want to lob you a quick question about what are you doing in the pandemic? How is that affecting your work?
Well, I mean, Sue and I were talking about this the other day. It's kind of funny. We've been together for like 32 years and married for I think 30, and I don't think we've ever gone more than 2 months without taking a trip for shows, for painting trips and stuff. And so it's been interesting just being home. And of course we have it very easy. We live in the woods in the country. We have 2 big studios there, and so we can go for hikes and we can do everything. Friends of ours in New York and Florence and India, people we know in India, we contact with them, and they have it very difficult. And so it's really just been more of an extended studio stay for us. But we feel very bad and we've known a couple people who have had relatives die, and so it's just been very heart-wrenching for us.
So we're going to take a break, Scott, and afterwards we're going to turn a corner. We've talked about your gorgeous artwork, but now we're going to talk about your novels. You're an author, and some of your documentary films, because you're also a film producer. So a man of many talents. We're going to see a little bit about a film about state-church separation and talk a little bit about the infamous Harold Camping and his, what did he call it? The End is Near. which I think was a fascinating work that you did. So stay tuned. We'll be back with more of Scott Burdick on Free Thought Matters.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed by the intrusions of religion into our secular government. That's why I'm asking you to support the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics, working to keep state and church separate, just like our founding fathers intended. Please support the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
I'm Ken, and I'm an out-of-the-closet atheist. For me, it was never a choice whether to become an atheist or not. It was just more of a natural progression. I never had an aha moment or any precise moment in time where I decided to suddenly switch gears. I was raised in a somewhat religious environment. I was a pretty liberal Lutheran family, but it just seemed the more I grew and learned and basically matured, I just kept, looking at the person to the left of me and to the right of me, and, I couldn't believe more and more that, other people were actually believing this stuff, whereas I was, progressing into a mindset that this is entirely not true. And it was never, a decision for me. It was just a natural occurrence. And so I think of myself as a natural atheist if there ever was one.
And we're back with Free Thought Matters. We're continuing our conversation with the artist, author, and documentary filmmaker, Scott Burdick. And Scott, we talked about a lot of your artwork. Not enough, but we talked about some of your artwork in the previous segment. But now let's move to some of your filming. You've done a couple of films about state-church separation, one called In God We Trust. What was that about?
In God We Trust was the first one I did, actually, because I hadn't really done film for years. And just in town here, in the town right near where I live, King, North Carolina, they had this whole huge thing happen when a veteran, Stephen Hewitt, had complained to the city about them putting up Christian flags and statues and doing all kinds of religious services at the public monument for veterans. And so that turned into this huge rally, and they were calling for people to encourage people to leave that weren't Christian, that didn't believe in that, and they had major speakers come, and it was a shock to me to see, 5,000 people waving Christian flags and calling for people to be, run out of town. And so I just grabbed my camera that I was using to do some art demos, art videos, and over a year, I just interviewed people, and then just put it on the internet. And it turned into a really big thing on the internet. I had never put anything on YouTube before, and eventually it got used by Americans United for separation of church and state in a lawsuit, which they told me, Barry Lynn there told me that they had never been able to challenge these fake public forums that they'd put up. But the film gave a lot of because I'd interviewed people who had said, yeah, the strategy is if anybody enters the lottery to put anything but a Christian flag up, an atheist flag, a Hindu flag, a Muslim flag, they would end the program. And then they talked about the threats that they were using to anybody else. And so they won the lawsuit, and it was taken down eventually. And it was pretty
Stephen Hewitt,
interesting.
as a member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and we were pleased to give him our Atheists in Foxhole Award, and learned so much from your documentary. And then you did another documentary, and I think kind of in conjunction with the Freedom from Religion Foundation's Triangle Research Free Thought Society chapter there. You worked with, I think, a high school student, and tell us more about that.
Well, that was really a great thing. In fact, doing the In God We Trust film, I was contacted by Sue Kocher, who is just an amazing person and works with the Triangle Free Thought Society and with Freedom from Religion Foundation. But she had contacted me because she saw that film. And I really was not connected into any sort of larger atheist world. I didn't know about many other groups or anything. I just painted. I was an atheist and I was open about it to people. Got lots of hate mail about it. But so Sue Kocher said, hey, you know, Catherine Stewart's written this book about the Good News Club, and we haven't been able to get anything on film of them. You know, you seem to be really good at talking to people. Do you think you could give it a shot and see if we could make some sort of documentary about that? Because they're going to do a Good News Club rally sort of thing in Raleigh. And so I said, all right, we'll give it a try. And so we had this wonderful high school student who we helped us film this. And then I just filmed interviews and we did it. We got in, and it was funny too because they didn't. The guy in charge of it gave us permission and signed my release forms and everything. And I filmed it on camera like I always do. Once we put it out on YouTube, they sent us we were just about to. I guess they looked me up, and then they sent a cease and desist letter through their lawyers at one of the big Christian law firms, saying that I had not gotten permission to film at their event. And so I told them, I sent them the release form. They said I had forged it. And then I sent them which was interesting because that's obviously, you know, just a lie. But they said, well, you know, in North Carolina, you know, a jury might believe them more than you. And so I sent them the actual filmed, I filmed him signing and discussing the release form. And then they went away. So, and that happened before. So it has happened to me many times actually. So.
Good idea to film it.
And then you actually got to film The End of the World. You made a documentary called The End is Near about Harold Camping. Tell us briefly about that.
Well, and that I did film while I was filming the In God We Trust. They happened to come through town and I saw the vans. And so it was a few months before that was going to happen, but I asked them, would you mind if I came with you for the last 3 days of the world and travel with you in your motorhomes? And they said, sure, because they knew I didn't believe, and they thought, well, it's a chance for us to convert you. And they were like, well, nobody will ever see your film. In fact, they even say that in the documentary. And so I went kind of thinking how ridiculous they were. And yet, when I did actually go with them those last 3 days of the world and I filmed them, they did it all through Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Dover, and some other places. And it was amazing how many people they did convince out of fear that maybe it will be the last day. And so I actually got really depressed filming it. And at the last day, I went home and I was really down about it. And you know, their kids were with them. They'd taken them out of school. Many of them have been doing this for 6 months, traveling around, spending all of their money on this, quitting their jobs. And so I think the film is important simply as kind of a cautionary tale. I felt very bad. And in fact, when I talked to Richard Dawkins about the experience, he had told me how, in the interview that I did with him, he said he really found it hard to feel sorry for people they were that stupid. And I said, well, you know, I mentioned the kids, and he said, oh, well, the kids, of course, I feel just horrible. I just feel so terrible for them. And later we talked about it, and it was interesting because I said, well, you know, those kids are indoctrinated into this. So as they grow up, they're likely to stay indoctrinated. And at what point, as they get older, do you no longer feel sorry for them? Because even though I was brought up Catholic, and Richard was, you know, in the Anglican Church of England or whatever, it was more mild. And so, and like you, Dan, you grew up with these sorts of views, and you were very fortunate to escape it. But even you were an adult probably, and you believed very similar things when I interviewed you. And I would still have felt sorry for you even when you were an adult before you had realized that.
So how can people see these? You have a YouTube channel where we can see these?
Sure, they can just go to my YouTube channel, and I've got the documentaries, but a lot of the interesting interviews that I could only use clips for, like of you and of Richard Dawkins and of James Randi and a lot of other free thinkers. I put the full hour-long interview, and there's one of Ray Comfort and Lawrence Krauss also that I filmed interviews and then them meeting. So it was kind of interesting, but yeah, they're all just free on YouTube.
So we're almost out of time. We have about a minute and a half here. You're also an author. I read your novel, Nihala, and really enjoyed that, which is sort of a futuristic science fiction thing. But your second novel is optioned to be a Netflix series. Tell us briefly about the title in that next book.
The immortality contract is a very much of an atheist sort of a theme. It comes out of, I had been thinking about this, Christians constantly would say to me, well, you know, it's a deathbed conversion thing. When you're on your deathbed, you're going to change your mind. And so I thought, what if a scientist offered the world a pill that would make them young again indefinitely? As long as they continued to take it every month, they would stay at their physical and mental prime indefinitely. But what if he then said, I'm only offering this to people who will agree not to support organized religion. No money to them, no public statements. You can believe whatever you want in your own heart, pray in your own house, but you cannot get my pill. You cannot get the fruits of science if you do not publicly forswear support of organized religion. And so it's switching their deathbed conversion idea of what would people really choose. And of course, the scientist believes this will solve all of the world's problems, bring in a era of reason. And so it's interesting as I tell it through the Christian, Muslim, and atheist points of view through 3 different characters through the story. So I was happy that they liked it. We'll see if it gets...
I hope we can watch it soon. And Scott Burdick, we so much appreciate you joining us today, sharing your art, filmmaking. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you for watching Free Thought Matters.
Because free thought matters.
Hi, I'm Steve Pinker. In my book, Enlightenment Now, I show that the world has become a better place as reason has been overcoming superstition and tribalism. But the values of the Enlightenment are under attack. That's why I'm a proud member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest association of free thinkers working to keep state and church separate. Please join me in supporting the Freedom from Religion Foundation to ensure that our government is driven not by religion, but by reason.